what we call the downside risks and uncertainty. The outlook remains highly uncertain, with risk largely, as we say, tilted to the downside. Russia's protracted war of aggression against Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East, delays in the implementation of the RRF or a stronger than expected impacts from fiscal consolidation could further dampen the resumption of growth. For the moment, our previous forecast is confirmed. As you may remember, more or less this is what we were estimating in spring. But these are the downside risks. And at the same time, if inflation were to fall faster than expected, monetary policy could turn out more accommodative. And the recent extreme weather events in Spain are a tragic reminder that environmental risks are mounting. And speaking of uncertainty, just a few words on the EU-US relations. Because, of course, the trade relationship between the US and the EU is one of the world's largest and more strategically significant. In the last decade, trade between the EU and the US has more than doubled. In 23, in goods, it reached around 850 billion, and in services added 650 billion. So we are referring to 1.5 trillion. The EU has a trade surplus for goods vis-à-vis the US, worth 1.7% of our GDP, and a deficit for services worth 0.7% of GDP, but this in services is almost entirely driven by one member state, which is Ireland. The level of integration between our economies is such that EU-US trade relations are a stabilizing economic and political force. Despite trade disputes and regulatory divergences, both regions maintain a shared interest in upholding high standards, fair competition and stability in global markets. And in this context, a possible protectionist turn in US trade policy would be extremely harmful for both economies. And the Commission will work with the incoming US administration to advance a strong transatlantic agenda and ensure that international trade channels remain open while making them more secure. To sum up, after the stagnation we had in 23, the European economy is growing again towards the famous soft landing and is set to accelerate over the next 2 years. However, growth remains modest and exposed to important downside risks that I mentioned. This makes it all the more urgent to pursue an ambitious agenda of investments and reforms to strengthen competitiveness and security within the framework of our new economic governance rules. The challenges have been well documented in the Draghi and Letta reports. You know the figures, figures are coming from our services, by the way. 800 billion in additional investment needs for our common priorities, additional. Just as governments are also working to bring down debt levels, so the famous narrow path. Where can this mountain of investments come from? On the one hand, from the implementation of the RRF, which has already brought our level of public investment to its highest point in over a decade, as I mentioned. But first of all, it must come from private investment. And here it will be crucial to create the condition for mobilizing private financing on a much greater scale than we have been able to do so far. And finally, part of the answer must also be new common financing instruments for common European public goods. Okay, thank you.